విగ్రహం కాదు. బ్రెజిల్లో 2020లో ఏర్పాటు చేసిన స్టాచ్యూ ఆఫ్ లిబర్టీ విగ్రహం కూలిపోయింది.
Coming in, the ground is so full of water it can't hold anymore. More neighborhoods could be under threat.
These other campers weren't able to be saved.
That atmospheric river inundating the region.
Was visible from early hours today as dense smog, along with dropping temperature.
Alexis! Alexis! Oh my God!
What stage of history are we living in right now? When news keeps pouring in from all over the world, do you ever feel like time is speeding up? Like something really big is getting close? The Bible has long called this the last days, the time Jesus and the prophets talked about in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Revelation, warning about signs that would show up for everyone to see. But the scary part isn't just one event here or there. It's how everything is happening at once, getting worse, and fitting together in a way that feels meaningful. Do you think these are just random disasters or pieces coming together? Do you sense that urgency in every news story, every video going viral these days? Coming up next are 7 recent events from around the world that have a lot of folks believing the Bible's scenario isn't some far-off prophecy anymore. It's playing out right in front of us. So don't miss a single detail. And now, so you don't have to wait any longer, let's dive right into these 7 big stories making headlines everywhere. And what they all have in common is they're loaded with Bible messages. Let's get started with 1. The Havanita statue in Guaíba, Brazil, toppled by strong winds. The wind came up suddenly, fierce and relentless. In Guaíba, part of the Porto Alegre metro area in Rio Grande do Sul state, Brazil, something happened that left a lot of folks stunned. The Havanita statue, about 98 feet tall, a copy of the Statue of Liberty, got completely knocked down by strong winds. In just a moment, this symbol that had stood tall for years was flat on the ground, like an invisible hand pushed it over without a second thought. Havanita wasn't just some decoration. It stood for freedom, for progress, and the pride of modern people, an image that's real familiar around the world today. But that very symbol couldn't stand up to the unusual wind. News outlets like Brazil's G1, Reuters, and AP described winds stronger than normal, enough to wreck a structure built to last. Not a streetlight, not a roof, but a big, heavy, solid statue. When pictures of the fallen statue started spreading, a lot of people felt it was more than just a regular accident. The Bible talks about moments like this in words we're all used to. Revelation 18:2 says, "Babylon the Great has fallen. It has become a home for demons," talking about the downfall of a proud system built on human power, but without God as its foundation. The image of the statue falling also brings to mind Isaiah 21:9. Babylon has fallen. All the images of its gods lie shattered on the ground. In the Bible, idols aren't just stone or metal. They're symbols of what people worship instead of the Lord God. When an idol falls, it's a sign the old order is coming apart, even if folks haven't noticed yet. That feeling gets stronger when you compare it to Daniel 2:34-35, where the prophet describes a huge statue hit by a stone, not cut by human hands, and completely shattered. That stone became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Human power, no matter how big and tall, can't stand when the time comes for the Lord's judgment. Of course, plenty of people were quick to say it was just unusual strong wind. But that unusual part doesn't stand alone. The statue had stood firm for years, carefully engineered, and now it falls right when the world is seeing one big upheaval after another. When signs like this pile up together, they're not just random anymore. They're like the last pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The fall of Havanita isn't just local news. It's like the first bell ringing, warning that the familiar symbols of the old way are starting to shake. And when one symbol goes down, bigger things behind it start to wobble too. Coming up soon, another event, stronger and right at the heart of world power, will keep adding to this chain of signs you can't ignore. 2. Sudden flash floods rising fast in Washington, D.C. The water doesn't rise slowly. We're seeing moments where, in just a few hours, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, changes completely. Familiar streets suddenly turn into rushing rivers. Cars get swept away. Underpasses fill deep with muddy water. You see it too. This chaos isn't from war or riots, but from a flood that hits so fast people can't react in time. Washington, D.C. has always been seen as the center of power and order, home to those iconic political buildings. We're used to thinking of it as a safe fortress, protected by science, technology, and long-term planning. But reports from the Washington Post, CNN, and Fox News say water levels rose unusually high, causing serious damage to city infrastructure and showing how fragile our plans can be in an instant. As the water surges through the streets, it's easy to think of what Jesus warned about. Matthew 24:38-39 says, "In the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, right up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away." Life goes on as usual. Everything seems normal until a sudden flood wipes out the line between safety and chaos. That feeling of helplessness spreads not just in the flooded areas, but in the minds of folks watching the news updates. You feel it too, when those images of water rushing through the heart of the Capitol keep coming on screen. Luke 21:25 puts it clearly. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. That kind of panic doesn't need an ocean. It's right there in the middle of the city. Looking deeper, we're seeing echoes of the Great Flood in Genesis 7:17-20. The flood continued. The waters rose greatly on the earth. The Bible doesn't just record an old event, it leaves a pattern to warn us about the last days when floods become signs of judgment drawing near. Of course, many say it's all just the result of climate change. We don't deny that, but the Bible has long told us natural disasters will increase before the Lord returns, like birth pains getting stronger and closer together. What's worth noting isn't one single flood, but how events like this are happening more and more often around the world. So this flood in Washington, D.C. is no longer just a passing news story. We're facing a vivid picture of the great flood in the end times, when even the centers of worldly power can't escape the warning. And as the water flows through those streets, the chain of signs keeps unfolding, bringing us closer to things worth thinking about ahead. 3. Strange octopus-like creature in the sky over Augusta, Georgia. The sky over Augusta, Georgia was quiet, like any other day, when a young woman caught something strange floating up there on video. The short clip spread fast and got people stopping to watch it over and over, studying every frame. You know that feeling, when something shows up in the sky that's not a bird, not a plane, and doesn't move like anything normal in nature. The thing in the video had a big head, a dark body, and long tentacles hanging around it, moving slowly like it was swimming through the air. You can see it yourself. It doesn't dart away or shake. It just drifts in this odd way that feels both weird and a little creepy. Outlets like the Daily Mail, Fox News, and several local Georgia stations talked about the clip as something hard to explain, especially since other folks in the area said they saw the same thing. When you put those images next to the Bible, it's hard not to think of certain passages. Revelation 9:3-7 talks about creatures coming up from the abyss, shaped like locusts, with faces like human faces, tails like scorpions. We're not saying it's an exact match, but the Bible often uses symbolic language for things that are beyond normal human understanding. It's not just revelation. Luke 21:11 says plainly, "There will be great signs in the heavens." That verse hits home when we keep seeing strange things in the sky, not just in one place, but in different countries. What used to sound far-fetched now shows up regularly in news reports and videos taken by everyday people. Joel 2:30 makes the picture even clearer. "I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth." The Bible doesn't say these wonders will be comfortable or familiar. They're meant to wake us up, to signal that the times are changing. We're living in an era where the line between the ordinary and the mysterious is getting blurry, especially when things like this appear in the middle of a normal day. Of course, plenty of explanations came quickly. Experimental drones, unusual clouds, or CGI tricks. We've all heard those ideas before. But the Augusta video shows smooth, natural movement, no jerks, no obvious edits, and several witnesses saw it at the same time. When you add it to all the other UFO and unidentified object sightings around the world, it starts to feel less like random chance and more like part of a bigger picture. So the Augusta event isn't just another viral video. It feels like a sign that supernatural forces may be showing themselves, just as the Bible warned about the last days. And when the sky no longer feels like the same old sky, whatever comes next might make us all think a little harder. 4. Continuous storms and atmospheric rivers in the Pacific Northwest. Signs are popping up here and there across the region, and the picture is getting clearer as nature stops coming in single hits and starts working in chains. In the Pacific Northwest, a place that's no stranger to rain and wind, something unusual is happening. The storms aren't just coming and going, they're lining up one after another with hardly a break. The atmosphere up there seems locked into a fierce cycle, pulling moisture from the ocean, stretching it out, and dumping it on land with an intensity we haven't seen before. The affected area stretches through Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, and Lewis counties in Washington state and spills over into Oregon, where the ground is already soaked from wave after wave of rain. Weather forecasts say accumulated rainfall could reach 20 inches in a short time, enough to turn quiet rivers and streams into raging floods. Infrastructure is starting to feel the strain. Levees are under pressure, and landslide risks are at the highest level. What's really standing out isn't just the amount of rain, but how continuous and coordinated it all is. This thing called an atmospheric river, these long bands of moisture, thousands of miles long, keep landing one after another, bringing huge amounts of water. So the storms aren't isolated events anymore, but a non-stop series. You can really feel that nature here isn't running on its usual rhythm. The Bible talks clearly about times like these. In Luke 21:25, Jesus speaks of the roaring of the sea and waves, and nations in confusion over the uncontrollable power of nature. Matthew 24, verses 7 through 8, calls them the beginning of birth pains, when earthquakes, famines, and disasters no longer come separately, but increase in both frequency and strength. Amos 4:7 even points out God's control over rain, how he can send it on one city and withhold it from another. A lot of folks will say, this is just extreme weather from climate change, part of Earth's natural cycles. But if it's only weather, why are these events piling up, connecting, and happening in exactly the pattern the Bible warned about thousands of years ago? As atmospheric rivers show up more often, and the ground doesn't have time to dry between storms, the question isn't really why anymore. It's what are we being reminded of? Maybe you're sensing it too. This isn't just a story about rain in one corner of America. When we put these events alongside other signs happening around the world, a clear message starts to come through. Ongoing natural disasters aren't simply tragedies. They're warnings, being repeated in different ways, getting louder and clearer, for a world that's stepping very close to the edge of the last days. 5. Palm tree, struck by lightning, and burns in San Jose, Callosa de Segura, Alicante, Spain. After water, after wind, the Bible tells us there's another thing that often shows up at key moments in human history: fire from heaven. In San Jose, Callosa de Segura, in Alicante province, Spain, a bolt of lightning came down out of nowhere in a quiet neighborhood, hit a tall palm tree, and set it blazing right away. It wasn't a slow smolder or a gradual burn. It flared up fast, like the fire was lit from inside. What really stunned people wasn't just how perfectly the lightning struck, but the way the flames spread. From local news reports and a video that's been going around, the fire burned very clean. No thick black smoke, no harsh burning smell like you usually get when plants catch fire. The palm tree stood there like a torch, glowing bright in the dark, giving off an eerie, almost unreal feeling that's hard to explain. We can all see this isn't the usual picture of a regular fire. You might feel something odd about it too. The flames didn't look wild and destructive. They seemed almost deliberate, like a mark put there on purpose. In the Bible, fire from heaven is never random. Luke 17:29 talks about the day Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, when fire and sulfur rained down as the final end to a corrupt way of life. Revelation 13:13 describes a power that makes fire come down from heaven in front of people as a sign to shake up what everyone believes. Even further back, in Exodus 9:23-24, thunder, lightning, and fire came down mixed together on Egypt, not just to scare people, but to show God's complete authority over nature and history. When you put those Bible stories next to what happened in Alicante, they suddenly feel uncomfortably close. Of course, some will say it was just a normal lightning strike, and palm trees catch fire easily anyway. But if it was only lightning, why did the fire burn so clean, bright and clear, no toxic smoke, and it didn't spread to anything around it? In the Bible, the fire of judgment doesn't always come with total chaos. Sometimes it's a clear sign, focused, unmistakable. When we look at this event alongside the earlier signs, statues falling, floods rising, strange creatures in the sky, one storm after another, the whole picture starts to darken. Fire from heaven isn't just the last element of nature, it's a symbol of cleansing and judgment. That burning palm tree in San Jose wasn't simply an accident. It feels more like a quiet reminder that the time of warning is moving into something more serious. And once the fire has come, the Bible says the story doesn't stop there. The next signs won't just touch nature, they'll reach people directly, their faith, and the choices every soul makes in the last days. 6. Terrible air quality. In New Delhi, India, sometimes the smoke doesn't come from nature, and it's not from war either. It's the smoke we humans make from our own daily lives. In New Delhi, the capital of India, the AQI has hit close to 500, the highest danger level, turning the sky into a thick gray blanket. This huge city feels like it's drowning in a poisonous fog, where the sunlight looks dim and even breathing feels heavy. New Delhi has long been known as one of the most polluted cities in the world, but these days it's far worse than usual. Factory smoke, car exhaust, fine dust, and winter smog all mixed together into something stifling. Schools have closed, people stay indoors as much as they can, and hospitals are overwhelmed with breathing problems. A city of tens of millions feels like it's trapped in a sealed box, where the air itself has become a threat. When we look at scenes like that, it's easy to see one thing very clearly. This isn't just an environmental problem anymore. You can see it too. When people put all their smarts into using up resources, consuming more, and growing without limits, the very air that keeps us alive starts choking us instead. Isaiah 24, verse 5, warned long ago that the earth is polluted by its people because they break the laws and violate the everlasting covenant. In Revelation 11:18, the Bible talks about the time of judgment when God will destroy those who destroy the earth. The picture of New Delhi covered in toxic smoke feels like a real-life example of that warning. No need for asteroids or supernatural disasters. Our own hands are slowly ruining the foundation of life that we depend on. Revelation 9, verse 2 describes smoke rising from the abyss, darkening the sun and the air. When you put that verse next to New Delhi's hazy sky, the line between symbol and reality gets frighteningly thin. The light is blocked, directions get lost, and people struggle in the consequences of their own choices. Still, experts are sure this is just the result of industrialization, population growth, and economic development. But the Bible never denies natural causes. What it stresses is the spiritual meaning behind them. When people worship progress, and forget the Creator, the destruction doesn't come from above. It comes from the very systems they've built. So the sight of New Delhi choked with bad air isn't just another environmental news story. It's a clear sign of the earth being defiled before the day of judgment. When smoke hides the sky, that's also when human conscience is put to the test. And the Bible says that after the earth is polluted, the next signs won't stop at the environment. They'll reach right into society's order and people's souls. 7. Kilauea volcano in Hawaii forms a smiley face in a pit 85 meters deep. While people are busy looking up at the sky for signs, the ground quietly answers back with a strange symbol carved right into itself. At Kilauea volcano in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, a new deep pit has formed with a large diameter and a depth of about 85 meters. What shocked the world wasn't just the depth, but the shape of the pit, a clear, smiley face, like it was etched into the earth. Kilauea is one of the most active volcanoes on the planet, where lava and the ground are always changing. But this time, photos released by the USGS and the media show the edges of the deep pit, forming two eyes and a clear, curved mouth that's hard to believe. It's not some vague imagination. It's sharp enough to make you feel uneasy the moment you see it. We might glance at that photo and think of it as an interesting trick of nature, but the creepy feeling sticks around for a long time. You can sense the cold irony in that smile, bringing no joy at all, appearing right on the edge of an active deep pit. In Revelation 9:1-2, the Bible describes a star falling to open the bottomless pit, with smoke rising to darken the sky, signaling terrible things about to pour out. Matthew 24:24 warns that in the last days there will be great signs and wonders meant to deceive, if possible, even the chosen ones. When a volcano, a symbol of raw power, takes on a shape like it's smiling, that image feels like a misleading sign, making people curious but off guard about something far more serious happening. Proverbs 15:13 says, "A cheerful heart makes a face smile," but here, that smile is completely empty. It doesn't come from joy, but from molten, unstable earth. This contrast creates a deep irony, as if something is mocking how we see things, using a happy image to hide the destruction below. But for scientists, this is just a random result of geology, from pressure and lava flows. The Bible has never denied natural laws. What it stresses is the timing and the meaning. When a smiley face shows up right on the edge of a deep pit amid a series of global signs, its symbolism is too clear to ignore. We're seeing not just the earth shaking, but symbols turned upside down. When a deep pit has a smiling face, that's not reassurance, it's cold mockery. And the Bible tells us that when signs start to feel this ironic, it means humanity is very close to the final line, where the truth won't be hidden anymore. So that's the 7 top news stories around the world right now. Which event made you stop and think the most? When you look at each event by itself, it might seem like just an accident, a natural disaster, or a random coincidence. But when you put them all together, a different pattern starts to show up. The Statue of Liberty getting knocked down by wind, floods pouring into the heart of power, strange signs appearing in the sky, one storm after another without a break, fire falling from above, the air turning poisonous, and finally a deep pit opening up with a cold, eerie smile. These aren't just separate pieces anymore. They form one continuous flow. That pattern moves in a very clear direction, from symbols that people built to nature turning angry, then to signs that go beyond what we're used to, and finally to invisible realities starting to open up. It's a process that keeps building, getting stronger, just like the Bible describes for the last days. Each event doesn't cancel out the one before. It follows and makes it bigger. Matthew 24 lays out the basic picture for this. In Matthew 24:7-8, Jesus says, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in many places. But all these are only the beginning of birth pains. What stands out is the word beginning, because it shows a series of events that keep coming, not just one single thing. Luke 21 takes that picture wider, to the whole world and even the heavens. Luke 21:25 says plainly, "There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish because of the roaring of the sea and waves. When floods, storms, and things in the sky all happen together, this prophecy doesn't feel vague or symbolic anymore. It matches what we're actually seeing." Revelation goes even further. It doesn't just describe what's happening on earth. It shows what's being opened from the unseen world. In Revelation 9:1-2, the Bible says, "The star opened the abyss. Smoke rose from it like smoke from a huge furnace, and the sun and sky were darkened." When smoke covers the skies over cities, when a pit appears in a way that's hard to forget, the connection is tough to ignore. The scariest part isn't any one thing by itself, it's how they all line up. These events aren't limited to one country, one continent, or one culture. They're happening all over the world, almost at the same time, growing stronger and more frequent, making it feel like time itself is getting squeezed. The pace of the world isn't slow and steady like it used to be. You can feel it clearly. Everything is moving faster, piling up, getting heavier. You don't have to look far. Just checking the news each day shows how these big events keep coming more often. The Bible calls this the days being shortened. When signs come so quickly, people don't have time to get ready. Revelation 11:18 points to another part of the big picture. The time has come for judgment, to destroy those who destroy the earth. Polluted air, ruined land, a choking environment. These aren't just science or policy problems anymore. They're part of a spiritual charge. Humanity isn't only the victim, we're also the cause of this breakdown. When you line up the 7 events, a clear structure appears. First comes the fall of a symbol people proudly built. Then the basic elements go wild. Water, wind, fire, air. After that come signs that break out of the ordinary. And finally, the abyss opens, like the line between seen and unseen is breaking. This is the big picture that Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Revelation paint from different angles, not to scare people senseless, but to warn them, not to feed curiosity, but to call them to wake up. The Bible never hides the fact that before the end, the world will go through chaos like never before. What's worth thinking about is how people react in times like these. Matthew 24:38-39 recalls Noah's day. People were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, right up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came. The danger isn't that the signs are unclear, it's that people choose to ignore them. So the picture of these 7 events isn't just a scary list, it's a steady warning repeated in different ways. From the ground to the sky, from nature to symbols, from the physical to the spiritual, the message stays the same. The old order is shaking, and time is no longer on humanity's side. Revelation 22:12 ends with words that are both firm and urgent. "Behold, I am coming soon." That word soon echoes through the whole picture we've just looked at. It's not a vague thread. It's a timeline being sped up by everything happening around us. Looking back at all 7 events, what's left isn't just fear. It's a question about being ready. The Bible doesn't tell people to guess the day or hour. It tells them to recognize the signs of the times. And the big picture is being put together piece by piece, right in front of the world. If there's one thing to stress, it's this: humanity doesn't have much time left. Not by our calendars, but by the rhythm of these signs that are speeding up. And right in the middle of all this rush, the Bible invites each person to stop, wake up, and see that what's happening isn't random. It's the final warning ringing out before the curtain falls. When we put everything we've just gone through side by side, the main message becomes very clear. These 7 things aren't happening on their own. They fit together into one consistent warning. The world is entering a serious time of change. This isn't meant to scare people for no reason, but to wake up our hearts to what's coming closer every day. The Bible never promised that the last days would be peaceful. On the contrary, God's word says there will be chaos, shaking, and hard trials. But it also points to the one true path to real peace. That path isn't found in power, knowledge, or progress. It's found in turning back to God with humility and trust. This is a time when each of us needs to stop and take a good look at ourselves. Not to panic, but to stay alert. Repentance isn't about being afraid of judgment. It's a brave step to admit our weaknesses and return to the source of life. Coming back to the Lord isn't a loss. It's finding again what we've let slip away in the rush of everyday life. Getting ready spiritually doesn't mean waiting around in worry. It's about living awake and in prayer. When the world outside is shaking, prayer becomes a quiet but solid place of shelter. Putting our trust in God doesn't make the storms go away, but it helps us stand firm in the middle of them, with a deep peace inside. If what I've shared touches you, take a quiet moment to let it sink in. We may not be able to change the way the world is going, but we can always choose how we walk through it. Feel free to leave a short prayer or share your thoughts about the signs we're seeing as a way to stay alert together and support one another. Your response isn't just words. It's a small but meaningful act of faith. When you share, pray, or reflect, it shows you're not ignoring what's happening and you're not walking this path alone. Community grows from honest moments like these. If you find this helpful and needed, please show your support gently by liking, sharing so others can hear it too, and subscribing to the channel so we can keep going on this journey of learning, staying awake, and preparing our hearts in the days ahead. Every interaction helps spread a message of hope in uncertain times. Finally, thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me right to the end. May God's peace be with you, guarding your mind and heart through all the changes in the world. Whatever the days ahead bring, I hope you keep walking in His light, faith, and hope.
Let's hope you find a nice dry place to be this morning. It is another weather warning.
The unknown. Take a listen.
We finally got that approved, and people.
Now we're going to turn to the growing measles outbreak in South Carolina. Hundreds of people.
Now let's get right back over to our Liana Golden, who is at Dulles right now. Liana, what can you tell us about what happened?
Freezing conditions that can feel like single digits or even.
The federal government. President Trump says his administration won't touch the Social Security.
Objective is to cut enough jobs to return the agency to staffing levels they last had.
Take a good look and see for yourself. In 2025, the world just isn't spinning like it used to. Bad news keeps piling up every single day. Wild weather disasters, the economy wobbling like crazy, society cracking at the seams, and folks feeling lost, like they're getting swept into some unseen current. Do you ever feel like time's racing by faster, more frantic? Or is it that we're standing right on the edge of something the Bible warned us about ages ago? What's happening now isn't just random stuff. It's all linking up, stacking on top of each other, like tolling bells echoing through the dark. Is this just history's bad luck, or the signs God laid out for the end times? If you've been wondering why everything's gone haywire all at once, hey, you're not alone. In this video, we'll walk through 10 scorching hot events hitting the US hard lately. Stuff that's popping up everywhere and loaded with hints. Each one's a puzzle piece, and every piece points back to those ancient prophecies. So don't skip a beat, because what you're about to hear might flip the way you see the world right now. And who knows, these could be the messages God tucked in there just for you. Now let's dive in with me and unpack the 10 biggest news stories shaking up America. Plus, the clever ways God slipped in warnings to tell us our time's running short. The top of that, the biggest and clearest one right now, is record flooding in Washington state. In December 2025, Washington state suddenly became the focus of emergency news alerts. Rain poured down without stopping, heavy and relentless, like the sky had opened up completely. This atmospheric river brought massive amounts of rain, swallowing streets, homes, and even the normal everyday routines people were used to. In just a few short days, hundreds of thousands of folks had to leave their homes, and time felt squeezed, rushing by in a breathless way. Washington is no stranger to rain, but this time was different. In just a few days, starting around December 8, 2025, rainfall hit about 6 inches in spots, topping old records. Dense city growth overloaded the drainage systems, and climate change has made the weather more unpredictable than ever. Have you noticed how one disaster barely settles before the next one hits, like everything's speeding up in some unseen rhythm? Then the water started rising. The Skagit, Snohomish, Cedar, and Nooksack rivers all broke historical highs, going even higher than the big flood back in 1990. Over 100,000 people had to evacuate, with helicopters flying non-stop over Mount Vernon and Burlington to rescue those trapped. Roads were paralyzed, water up to about 5 feet deep in places, damage estimated around $2 billion, and a state of emergency declared while the rain showed no signs of letting up. In the middle of all that, the Bible rings out like a familiar yet striking reminder. Matthew 24:37-39 says, and Scripture records, "For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man, until the flood came and swept them all away." Those words aren't just an old story. They seem to shine a light right on what's happening today, when people go about life as usual until the waters rush in. It's not just the ground shaking, but people's hearts are unsettled too. Luke 21:25-26 warned about signs and the distress of nations, and the Bible makes it clear. On the earth, distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. Seeing rivers swell up like the ocean, folks start wondering, is this just weather or something bigger being revealed? Of course, plenty of people will say science explains it all. Atmospheric rivers, climate change, forecast models, it all makes sense. But the Bible never denies science. Matthew 24 shows that nature itself is the tool God uses to warn us. And when events go beyond human control, questions about a supernatural hand become clearer than ever. This flooding in Washington isn't just an environmental disaster. It's a wake-up call. It reminds us how fragile our safety really is, and how things can turn in the blink of an eye. And as the waters start to recede, another sign has quietly appeared, leading into the next event in this rush of warnings. 2. Announcement of job cuts at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Early in 2025, when a lot of folks were still trying to believe the economy had weathered the worst of the storm, a short news item out of Washington caught everyone off guard. The VA announced plans to cut nearly 30,000 jobs, with most of them in healthcare, the part that's looking after more than 18 million veterans. Those dry numbers hide the real story. Thousands of families losing their income, millions of patients facing longer waits, and a growing sense of worry spreading fast. Don't you see it, how the very people who sacrificed for this country are turning into the ones most at risk? This decision didn't come out of nowhere. America in 2025 is caught between two big forces, recovering from COVID, but with inflation still high, around 5%, putting a tight squeeze on the budget. The Trump administration signed an executive order back in January 2025 to slim down the federal government, and the VA ended up in the spotlight. The healthcare workforce, which had been up to 400,000, dropped to about 372,000, especially hitting hard at the big centers in Washington, D.C. and California, where the pressure to provide care is always sky high. But those figures on paper soon turned into real-life consequences. More than 1,000 workers got laid off in just the first few months in places like Texas and Florida, and plans to cut up to 35,000 healthcare positions by the end of the fiscal year were still hanging over everyone. Wait times for appointments at many facilities jumped from 20 days to 45 days, turning illness from a personal problem into something the whole community worries about. When the system starts slowing down like that, it really makes you stop and think. If even the last place meant to take care of them is shaking, what can we count on anymore? In times like these, the Bible hits close to home in a scary way. Matthew 24:7 warned about it, saying, Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. That famine here isn't just about running out of food. It's about lacking safety, lacking care, lacking the basic things needed to get by. When jobs disappear, fear spreads just as fast as any outbreak. Revelation 6:5-6 talks about something similar, describing, "I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand, a quart of wheat for a day's wages." Those scales stand for harsh measuring, where people get forced to live with shortages and unfairness. Does it sound familiar how everything gets calculated these days? Trimmed back? And lives seem to boil down to just another line on the budget? Of course, some will say this is just politics, a cold budget decision. But Romans 13:1 reminds us that no authority exists without God's permission. And the Bible says, "There is no authority except that which God has established." When choices like these push society toward instability, we can't just see the policy, we have to look for the deeper message behind it. So these cuts at the VA aren't only about jobs, they're a sign of tougher times opening up ahead. They remind us that systems we've built ourselves can fall apart pretty quick, and putting trust in the wrong place leaves a dangerous gap. And with the economy still shaky like this, another threat is quietly spreading through communities, pointing to the next big thing we can't ignore. 3. The sudden and alarming outbreak of measles. While the memories of the COVID pandemic still linger in everyone's mind, a disease we thought was long gone has come roaring back. Measles has broken out all across the United States, with over 1,900 cases, reported the highest number since the year 2000. Health news keeps coming in non-stop. Schools are shutting down, classrooms sit empty, and worry spreads faster than the virus itself. It feels like history repeating itself, but in a familiar yet strange way that gives you chills. The background of this outbreak brings out a sobering truth. After COVID, doubts about vaccines grew a lot, dropping the measles vaccination rate from a safe 96% in 2020 down to 93.5% by 2025, below the level needed for community protection. Just one small gap, and the virus slips right into groups of people, sparking 47 outbreaks in states like South Carolina and Utah. You see, sometimes our own carelessness opens the door to real danger. In all this, the Bible lines up in a chilling way. Luke 21:11 warned about it long ago, saying there would be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places. Pestilence isn't just physical sickness, it's also the cracks in our trust and sense of community. When disease returns like this, folks start wondering if it's just a health problem or something deeper. Revelation 6:8 talks about it too, describing, "I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him." That picture isn't meant to scare us senseless, but to remind us that outbreaks are part of the events in the last days. As sickness spreads, so does unease, helping people see how fragile we really are. A lot of folks say this measles outbreak is simply from low vaccination rates, something science can fully explain, and that's true. But the Bible never denies natural causes. In fact, God often uses things we understand to wake us up. 2 Timothy 3:1 warned that in the last days there would be terrible times, and disease is one of the clearest signs of that hardship. So measles isn't just a medical issue, it's a call to wake up and turn back to God. It reminds us that overconfidence can cost us dearly, and no system is completely safe from crisis. And while this outbreak hasn't fully died down yet, other troubling signs are already popping up in places no one expected, leading into the next event in this growing chain of warnings. 4. United Airlines aviation incident. On December 13, 2025, what seemed like a calm sky over Dulles Airport suddenly turned into a moment of real fear. A United Airlines flight had barely taken off when it had to turn back right away because of an engine failure. Debris fell down, and flames shot up near the runway. No one was hurt, but that scary moment reminded thousands of folks. Even a small problem up in the air can put us right on the edge between life and death. Is the sky something we've always seen as a symbol of safety and progress trying to tell us something? This incident wasn't just a one-off thing. In 2025, American aviation has faced a wave of warnings about maintenance and safety, especially with wide-body planes like the Boeing 777. Pressure to cut costs, shortages of skilled workers, and packed flight schedules have let risks build up over time. Dulles Airport, one of the biggest gateways in the country, ended up showing those quiet tensions more clearly than anywhere else. Specifically, Flight UA 803 left the runway at 12:20 inches the afternoon, but just minutes later, the left engine had a serious problem. The pilots had to handle an emergency while pieces from the engine fell and started a grass fire near the takeoff and landing area. After circling for almost an hour to dump fuel and steady things, the plane landed safely, and everyone on board breathed a sigh of relief. The FAA started an investigation right away, because this wasn't just a regular technical glitch, it was a wake-up call for the whole industry. Looking up at that smoky, fiery sky that day, a lot of people thought about words from the Bible. Luke 21:11 says, "There will be great earthquakes, famines and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven." Matthew 24-29 goes even further, talking about the powers in the heavens being shaken, like a sign of big things to come. An aviation accident happening right up in the air makes those words feel not so distant anymore, but something real and worth thinking about. Still, some folks say this was just a technical error, something that's not uncommon in aviation. But the Bible never says the signs have to break natural laws. On the contrary, God often uses everyday problems to wake people up, reminding us that no technology can guarantee perfect safety. When we put all our trust in machines, even a little issue can shake that trust. Think about it. How long has it been since we looked up at the sky with real awe, instead of just seeing it as a regular travel route? When you hear about a plane turning back because it lost an engine, do you feel like it's just distant news, or maybe a reminder meant for you? Sometimes, the strongest warnings come in the most ordinary ways. The United Airlines incident didn't just end with an investigation. It opened up a bigger question about signs from heaven in our time today. And just as the sky was getting quiet again, another stir was quietly building on the ground, leading us to the next event with even clearer warnings. 5. Extreme cold weather. In December 2025, America entered a winter unlike anything folks were used to. About 63 million people at the same time got hit by this extreme cold snap, with wind chills dropping down to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Even the milder southern states couldn't escape it. As the cold poured in like an invisible wall, a lot of people suddenly realized that nature wasn't following the old rules anymore. Luke 21:25 talks about signs that would make nations terrified, and this time, that terror came quietly through the freezing cold. This cold wave started up in Canada, but what really worried the experts wasn't just where it came from, it was how strong it was and how far it spread. Climate change is making the weather more extreme, with both heat and cold going way beyond normal. Joel 2:33-1 mentions wonderful signs in the heavens and on the earth when the usual order gets turned upside down, like a warning that nature itself is starting to shake. This cold isn't just a weather event, it's a sign of a deeper imbalance. In the Midwest, Chicago saw wind chills of minus 20 degrees, while the Deep South dropped to around 20 degrees, a number that's rare in that region's history. Schools in Georgia and the Carolinas had to close, and thousands of homeless folks faced the real danger of dying from hypothermia. Romans 8:22 says that the whole creation has been groaning and suffering like in the pains of childbirth, and seeing those frozen streets and people huddled up in the winter night makes that Bible verse feel heartbreaking but very real. Some people look at the climate reports and say it's all just science, with no spiritual meaning. But the Bible never separates nature from God's purposes. When the weather gets beyond what humans can control, that's when all the safety nets we trust show how fragile they really are. These harsh, cold spells were prophesied not to scare us, but to wake us up and call us to think again about our relationship with the Creator. In the middle of that bone-chilling cold, many folks started thinking more about life and what really lasts when all the comforts can vanish overnight. No need for loud preaching. The quiet of winter was enough to make hearts grow still. Nature, in its own way, is speaking the words that people often ignore. This extreme cold weather isn't just a forecast on the news. It's a reminder that creation is crying out. While the ice hasn't melted yet, other changes keep coming one after another. And right after this, we'll move on to another event where the signs of the last days show up even clearer in people's lives. 6. Staff cuts at the Social Security Administration. In February 2025, a short but cold notice came out of Washington. The Social Security Administration is starting to lay off more than 7,000 employees. That number drops the agency's workforce to its lowest level in 50 years, just when tens of millions of Americans are counting on those retirement checks to get by. There was no big explosion or drama, but the worry spread quietly, like a crack in the foundation of society. Matthew 24:7 warned about famines in various places, and sometimes that hunger doesn't start in the stomach. It's the fear of losing security. The executive order to shrink the government was meant to save money, and the SSA became the main target. This agency handles benefits for over 70 million Americans, from seniors to people with disabilities. But offices in Washington, D.C. started closing one after another. What used to be the last safety net for many families is now starting to shake. Revelation 6:6 talks about a time when a quart of wheat for a day's wages, a picture of scarcity where the basics suddenly feel out of reach. Dropping from about 57,000 employees to 50,000 isn't just a dry statistic. It means plans to cut in-person visits at local offices by up to 50% in 2026, saving around $98 million but creating huge backlogs and months of waiting and worry for people in big states like New York. When things slow down, trust in the system starts to fade. 2 Timothy 3:1-2 describes the last days as times of trouble, when people cling to things and power but lose care for one another. Some folks say this is just politics, a routine decision in any administration. But the Bible shows God doesn't always work through big miracles, sometimes through changes that force us to rethink what we're depending on. When the pillars of society wobble, the empty spots in our hearts show up clearer than ever. That lack isn't meant to destroy us. It's meant to wake us up. You might feel the heavy breathing of society through news like this, even if it doesn't hit you directly. Stories that seem far away really reflect a fear that's very close. If one day all the systems slow down, where will we turn? Right in those moments, the Bible speaks quietly but steadily, reminding us that putting our trust in the wrong place always leads to unease. The cuts at the Social Security Administration aren't just about the budget. They're a warning that we've gotten too comfortable leaning on things we built ourselves. And when another pillar starts to shake, the picture of the end times gets a little sharper, paving the way for what's coming next, when the trouble won't just be on paper, but right there in everyday life. 7. Black farmers' response to tariff relief. In December 2025, in New Orleans, the meeting hall wasn't as lively as in past years. The black farmers sat together not to celebrate a great harvest, but to figure out how much longer they could hold on to their own land. The $12 billion aid package came up a lot in talk, but in their eyes, it wasn't the answer. It was just putting things off. The Bible talks about times when the land is still there, but the crops don't bring life like they used to. The trade tensions with China have gone on for years, and farming has taken the hardest hit. Soybeans, cotton, corn, things that used to support whole communities have turned into a burden with shaky prices and smaller markets. In that situation, The warning about famines in Matthew 24-7 doesn't feel like some far-off picture of war or deserts anymore. It shows up right in the fields of the American South, where folks work hard but bring in less and less. At the National Black Growers Council Conference, personal stories came out slow but heavy. James Davis and many other farmers weren't asking for miracles, they just wanted a long-term plan, so they wouldn't get pushed out. There, every support figure got weighed. Every policy decision got looked at closely. That scene brings to mind Revelation 6:5-6, where the scales stand for a time when life gets priced out and everything costs more, not just in money. What's worth noting is their worries don't stop at this season or next year. Many talked about the next generation, whether their kids and grandkids would still want to stick with the land. When hope wears thin, hunger starts to change form. Amos 8:11 speaks of a different kind of famine, not for bread, but for right guidance. And that's quietly showing up when people don't know what to hold on to in all these changes. Some see this whole thing just as an economics problem, where supply and demand and tariffs call the shots. But the Bible shows famines don't usually come alone. They're the result of long-built wrongs in how people run their lives. When the ones growing the food are the most worried, that's not just a market issue, it's a sign the whole system is cracking. Maybe what makes this story touch so many is how every day it feels. We all know that feeling of working hard, but the future still looks unclear. We've all seen our efforts' worth decided by things out of our control. In that everyday struggle, the Bible's message rings out, not as a threat, but as an explanation for the unease spreading around. The black farmer's reaction to the not quite enough relief package isn't just about money or policy. It lays bare a deeper hunger, where people crave fairness, direction, and meaning. And as long as that hunger isn't filled, the picture of the end times keeps growing, leading us to another event where crisis hits a very familiar pillar of modern life. 8. Wrongly deported immigrants have been released. On December 11, 2025, a name suddenly popped up in the news and quickly spread across all the broadcasts. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was set free after months of being deported by mistake. No fireworks, no big welcome, just the prison door closing behind a man who'd been swept up by a cold system. In moments like that, you realize injustice isn't always loud, but when it comes out, it really shakes people's sense of right and wrong. 2 Timothy 3:1-5 talks about times when people are unrighteous, and sometimes that unrighteousness hides right in procedures that seem indifferent. This story doesn't stand alone from the bigger picture. Strict immigration policies tightened up early in 2025 put huge pressure on the system, where mistakes aren't just numbers, they're people's lives. Garcia's case started back in March 2025, when he was wrongly sent to El Salvador and held in harsh conditions. James 5:4 talks about the cries of the wronged echoing from hidden places, and some cries take a long time to be heard. As the details came out, each one made folks pause. Garcia wasn't a dangerous criminal, but he got thrown into a prison he didn't belong in. Finally, Judge Paula Sinis in Maryland ruled to release him, like a small bright spot in a dark picture. That moment brings to mind Leviticus 19:33-34, where God reminds his people that foreigners aren't extras, they deserve fair treatment. What touches so many about this story isn't just the right or wrong ruling, but how fragile a person's life feels against a powerful system. One wrong signature, one missing paper, and everything changes direction. Maybe you felt small against decisions way beyond your control. And that's the kind of empathy that makes Garcia's story feel close to home. Some say this was just a technical glitch, an administrative slip that's hard to avoid. But the Bible shows God often uses those very mistakes to reveal deeper things. When someone faces unfair treatment, the light of justice doesn't just shine on the system, it shines into the hearts of those watching. James says, injustice doesn't go away. It builds up until it can't be ignored. Garcia being released doesn't erase the months he lost, but it draws a clear line between justice and indifference. In a world that's clamping down harder, this story reminds us that God doesn't side with blind power. He stands up for the oppressed. His justice might come slow, but it's never absent. And as the story of one immigrant getting cleared wraps up, it opens another glimpse into our times. Because injustice doesn't just happen at borders or in courts. It's spreading into areas that seem everyday, where people's faith keeps getting tested in what's coming next. 9. The major layoffs and cutbacks in America in 2025. In 2025, a stark number came out and quickly cast a shadow over life in America. More than 1.17 million people lost their jobs in just 1 year. What shocked folks wasn't that layoffs happened, but that they were going on right alongside reports of record profits from many big companies. Prosperity and hardship were sitting side by side, like two faces of a bent coin. In Matthew 24-7, Jesus talks about famines, and sometimes that hunger starts the moment a job disappears, even when the numbers on paper still look pretty good. Looking closer at the picture, the economy in 2025 wasn't totally falling apart, but it was full of contradictions. Tech and retail, two areas once seen as big growth drivers, turned into the main spots for these cutbacks. Companies restructured and streamlined to optimize, while workers got pushed to the sidelines with just a short email. Revelation 18:17 describes the moment when, in 1 hour, such great wealth has been destroyed, not by war, but by the sudden loss of security and stability. By November 2025, that 1 month alone saw 71,321 layoffs. The total for the year jumped more than 54% compared to 2024, hitting hardest in states like California, where living costs are already sky high. Those office buildings that used to stay lit all night are getting quieter, and homes are facing mortgages, bills, and an uncertain future. That scene brings to mind the Bible's warnings about foundations that seem solid but can shake more than we think. One everyday thing about this wave of layoffs: it doesn't pick and choose. Engineers, managers, salespeople, new hires, or folks with 10 years in all could end up as the next number. Maybe you've seen stories like that around you, or at least felt that unease about tomorrow. It's that spreading worry that makes the Bible's message feel not like old history, but like it's being retold in today's words. A lot of people say this is just an economic cycle, that the market will fix itself. But the Bible doesn't deny cycles, it asks what's really driving them. In 2 Timothy 3:2, it talks about times when people are lovers of money, and when profits get put ahead of people, breakdown is just a matter of time. Greed doesn't just hurt individuals, it cracks the whole social structure. So this wave of layoffs in 2025 isn't just about jobs. It's a mirror showing a system that's choosing build-up over care, efficiency over dignity. In the light of the Bible, it's a clear warning that wealth isn't a safe shelter, and work can't be the idol that saves us. When millions of folks have to pause and rethink the value of work, stability, and faith, the picture of the end times gets sharper. And from this quiet collapse in the job market, we'll move to the next event, where not just jobs, but trust in society gets tested even deeper. 10. Immigration policies getting stricter all the time. After all the ups and downs we've been through, this latest development doesn't come with a big bang. It comes with a door quietly closing. In June 2025, America's immigration rules moved into a tougher phase, pausing the acceptance of refugees from 19 countries, ramping up checks on social media, and tightening up what used to be seen as paths of hope. When borders aren't just lines on a map anymore, but lines drawn by suspicion and fear, a lot of folks start feeling that quiet tension building in society. The background for this decision didn't come out of nowhere. After the shooting involving the National Guard, worries about security shot up, and orders were quickly issued that hit countries like Venezuela or Iran directly. In Matthew 24:6-7, Jesus says people will hear of wars and rumors of wars, not just on battlefields, but right in everyday life, where fear can turn into policy. Digging deeper, the specific steps show a level of control like we've never seen before. Green cards got paused. 5 years of social media history became part of the approval process for citizens from 42 countries. And the Texas border turned into a hotspot, with lines of people waiting in silence. Revelation 6-4 talks about the red horse that takes peace from the earth, and that peace sometimes doesn't vanish with bombs and bullets, but with distrust creeping in between people. Maybe you've wondered the same thing. Does security really have to come at the cost of closing up like this? Does checking every old post really make us safer? Or does it just widen the gaps between us? Those questions aren't just political, they touch on the heart of how fear is driving our group decisions. What's worth noting is that the Bible paints a very different picture. Isaiah 2-4 talks about the day when nations beat their swords into plowshares, when war gives way to peace. But here, things seem to be going the other way. Swords aren't being laid down, but replaced with fences, files, and monitoring systems. That contrast makes the prophecy ring out not as some distant memory, but as a measure for today. On the other hand, some folks say it's all just to protect the country, that national security has to come first. But the Bible shows that God often uses the tensest times to signal bigger conflicts coming. When fear leads the way, war doesn't always start with guns. It can start with losing trust between nations. So, this event isn't just about immigration. It's about the direction the world is heading in these end times. Amid closing doors and tighter borders, God's message stays the same. He calls for peace, not out of naivety, but out of watchfulness. And as this chain of events wraps up, the question still echoes. Will we choose to live by fear, or by that call to reconciliation the Bible laid out so long ago? When we look back at all the signs that have been happening, we can see a picture that's no longer scattered. The upheavals in the world, from wars, injustice, division, to fear and crises, are all at the same time raising one common reminder. The Bible doesn't call that coincidence. It's God warning humanity about the last days, not to cause panic, but to wake up hearts that are still asleep. In days like these, what God wants isn't panic, but a clear-headed and humble heart. Let's put our trust back in Him, keep praying steadily, repent, and return to what really matters. When the light of faith is held steady, each one of us can become a small point of light, spreading messages of love, hope, and truth in a world full of turmoil. If these recent events have touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Feel free to leave a prayer, an honest thought, or how you feel in the comments below, as a way for us to connect and support each other in faith. And if this message meant something to you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking together. Thank you for listening all the way to the end.
What comes to your mind when I mention West Asia? Conflict, regional rivalry.
And another climate story is a stark warning from Iraq, where officials say the country...
Tensions in West Asia, thousands of Afghans are flooding back into their homeland from Iran.
It's only visible from a distance. The crops have...
What can I do? Cry here on my land? Today...
Не рассказать, душа куда-то аж упрыгивает.
Lately, experts are saying the Euphrates River might completely dry up by 2040. Have you ever wondered what's going to happen to the world when this holy river finally turns into nothing but cracked, empty desert? If you've heard about those Bible prophecies talking about the final signs, well, this could be the moment we've all been waiting for. Just picture it. Millions of people with no water, pure desperation, wars breaking out over the last drops, diseases blowing in on hot winds and sweeping through cities. And right there on the dry riverbed, secrets that have been buried for thousands of years finally coming to light. Everything happening fast, like someone just hit the fast forward button on the end of the world. You feel that too, don't you? So don't you dare look away. Every single part coming up is going to show you chaos you probably never even imagined. You ready? All right, come on with me. Let's dive right into this story and see what's waiting for mankind up ahead. Here we go. Starting with 1. The Euphrates River in 2040. Imagine the year 2040. The Euphrates River, the lifeline of the whole Mesopotamian civilization, has stopped flowing. Instead of that 1,740-mile river that watered humanity all the way back to the Garden of Eden, all you see is a giant crack running through the desert, so dry the red mud has turned to dust blowing in the hot wind. Can you picture that? And more important, if this really happens, do you think it's just climate change or something holy trying to get our attention? According to Iraq's Ministry of Water Resources, 2021 to 2025, the Euphrates could dry up completely because of dams and long droughts. CSIS in 2025 said, the river's flow has already dropped 50% over years of drought. Lake Habaniya went from 3.3 billion cubic meters down to only 511 million. Rainfall keeps falling about 18 millimeters less every 100 years. All the numbers are coming together like puzzle pieces, pushing us toward disaster. What do you think when things we always called impossible start happening day after day? If you were standing in Iraq right now, would you feel that countdown in the air? Revelation 16:12. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up. That prophecy suddenly gives you chills when you put it next to the real numbers. It feels like the Bible is stepping off the page and sliding right into today's headlines. From 2025 to 2030, drought and dams will cut the water another 40%, and Iraq's wheat harvest will drop 60%, according to IMAP. Millions of people will be short of clean water, and cholera will come roaring back like it did in Basra in 2025. By 2035, the desert will rip through farmland, leaving 23 million people in the river basin with no water to live on. Can you imagine kids standing in 120-degree heat, waiting in line for one bucket of water? Or a farmer like Ahmed in Fallujah on his knees in a barn full of dead animals? Jeremiah 50-38, a drought against its waters, that they may be dried up. Those words sound like a reminder that the collapse isn't just weather, it's coming from human pride and sin too. By 2040, the riverbed of the Euphrates will be nothing but cracked earth stretching like a sword cut across the Middle East. Baghdad will hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The Syria-Iraq border will turn into a desperate migration route, and the ancient cities along the river will just be ruins from the days when water still existed. Does it feel like you're watching an end-of-the-world movie? Except this isn't a movie. This is what climate models, politics, and social forecasts are all pointing to. Isaiah 11:15, the Lord will wave his hand over the Euphrates with a scorching wind. That verse describes exactly what the hot winds and drought are doing to Mesopotamia right now. Some IPCC scientists in 2023 say the 2040 picture is too gloomy and desalination tech will save the day. But they're leaving out politics. Turkey has already cut the flow from 500 to 200 cubic meters a second. Lake Tharthar lost 80% of its water in 2025. And no climate model can predict wars, mass migration, or water fights. The hard data is shouting louder than any hopeful guess. In the end, the idea that the Euphrates dries up in 2040 isn't just an environmental story. It's an alarm bell, a sign the Bible talked about thousands of years ago, that when the river runs dry, mankind is walking into the final stretch of the test. Are you ready to look at what's hiding behind this sign? Keep reading, because what comes next is a whole lot scarier. 2. The tragedy of no water, 23 million people losing their lifeline. By 2040, when the sun is baking the land between the rivers like a giant oven, 23 million people living along the Euphrates are going to face something nobody can run from: thirst. A thirst so bad it can bring whole cities down and blow away communities that have been there for thousands of years. Have you ever thought that one drop of water could become as precious as gold? Come on, let's take a closer look at what's coming. According to Oxfam 2025, 7 million Iraqis and 3 million Syrians depend completely